Welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're going to make pork chops with gravy. So we're going to start out with 2 large pork chops. And mine are really thick here, and I'm only serving 2 people. That's why I'm using 2. If you wanted to serve more, you could actually add another pork chop or so into this. But for what I'm doing, this is serving the purpose of serving 2 people. So I put these into a bowl. I'm going to add anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 of a cup of buttermilk to it. And then I'm going to move these around in there and get them totally coated, because you want a good coating on the outside so the breading will stick to it. So go ahead and move them back and forth. Keep flipping them around until they actually turn white, because once you see a good coating of white on the outside, you know you're ready to use these. And then on a platter to the side, I have 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, and to this I'm adding 1/4 cup of Italian breadcrumbs. And you just need to mix this up really well, so that way the flour and the breadcrumbs are all mixed together to a point to where when you put the pork chops onto it, you're not getting too much of one thing in one place. So go ahead, move over the pork chops, press them into place a little bit. Make sure they're getting coated on the sides, top, and bottom. If you do have some places that didn't get coated, you can always use a fork and just move some of the breading over to the edges or whatever. And once both of these are done, we're going to get ready to take them to a skillet to cook them, because that will be our next logical step. So we're going to get a large skillet, put it over heat, and get it warming up. And in it, we're going to add at least 1/2 inch of oil in the bottom, because we want to make sure these cook up on the sides and everything like that. So put them in, get that temperature coming up. Just a reminder, when we're cooking these pork chops, they're going to be cooked per side at least 4 to 5 minutes or so until they're really browned. While they're in the pan here, we're going to add some seasoning to it. We're adding 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and then 1/4 teaspoon of either pork or chicken seasoning. I'm using something called Memphis style barbecue, which you can sprinkle on there. But each one of these was just basically 1/4 teaspoon of seasoning. And then when we cook this for like 5 minutes or more, flip it over. We're going to season the back side as well. But we want to cook these until they're pretty much done, because even though they're going in the gravy and they're going to cook a while later, we do want these to be finished before they go in there. You're going for an internal temperature of 145 degrees. So you can turn these several times while you're cooking them. Just make sure that while you're cooking it, you actually get it to a point where, you know, it's cooked at least 4 or 5 minutes on each side. And we're going to season both sides, like I said, make sure that it's completely done. And again, when you flip it over on the back side, it's the same thing. 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and 1/4 teaspoon of a pork seasoning or chicken seasoning, whichever you want to use. And we're going to let this cook until it gets really golden brownish. And that way we know we're pretty much at the end of this. And you can check it at that point with your thermometer to see that if it's actually cooked completely. And once it's done, we're going to move this off to a plate, and we're going to start working on the roux that's going to be our gravy. However, you do not want to get rid of anything that is in this pan. We want to keep it all, because the oil, the drippings, whatever, the pieces of breading that came off and the seasoning, this is all going to work to make this gravy for us. So we really don't want to lose any of that. So once we get everything put to the side, you're going to need some all-purpose flour. And we're going to put into this around 3 to 4 tablespoons. Now, if you have a lot of oil in here, this is where you're going to need a little bit more flour. But you don't want to overload this, so I wouldn't go over 3 to 4 tablespoons, because that's going to be plenty to mix in with the amount of oil that's here. And once you get that in, we're going to stir it up, mix it up, and make sure that all this flour is incorporated into the grease and oil in the pan, because we want to get rid of the taste of the flour. And you're going to have to cook that for a couple of minutes to make sure that happens. So at least 2 minutes. So that way you don't get a flour taste. You're actually going to get a lot of the taste from the oil, which was infused from the meat you just cooked. And that's good, because that's where we want to go with this. So keep mixing it. Make sure that you break up any of the larger lumps. Now, as we are stirring in stuff to go forward with this, the more you work this, the better it's going to actually have less lumps and everything like that. You're just going to add water to this, basically, and extend it until it becomes the gravy. So we have here 2 cups of water. You're going to use a 1.5 to 2 cups, depending on what's in your pan. So pour in, like 1/4 cup, and start working from there if you want. And just as you keep breaking up what's in the pan and mixing it in, and it incorporates and it becomes a little wetter, then we're going to add more water to it and then mix more up. Now, some people are like, why aren't you using milk? Well, because this recipe doesn't call for milk. This calls for water. So we're going to use the water, mix it in with what's in here. And as you see, this is going to become a really great gravy, but it is water-based. It doesn't have the milk in it. So keep stirring. If you see any large lumps, break them up as you go. You could use a slotted spoon with this if you want to. I'm just using what I have beside me, and it's going to work perfectly well. So keep adding the water until you've used it all. I ended up using the whole 2 cups of my water in here. And I'm just going to keep stirring this up until I break up all of it. And as you can see, it's starting to incorporate. And as this goes, the temperature in the pan is going to come up because, you know, you pour the water and you took the temperature down a little bit. But as you go, just break up those lumps, keep stirring it up. Now, mind you, when you're trying to break this up, sometimes there's a lump in there that's not necessarily a lump from flour. It might have been from breading or from seasoning or whatever. So you're not going to break them all up. But we want to get this pretty smooth. And as you cook it, it will thicken up, and that's the best thing. And as you can see with mine, it thickened up, the lumps went away, and it turned out really well. Now, once you get it to this point, we're going to add the pork chops back into it, so that way they can continue to cook. Now, as you get them in there, we're going to let this temperature come up. We're going to actually take some of the gravy and spoon it around them because you're going to need that on there just to actually coat both sides of it. You could flip them back and forth, but you do risk actually knocking some of your breading off when you do that. So I would just go ahead and just spoon it over the top of it and get it on there, so that way you have a good coating over top of the pork chops. Now, once it's in the pan like this, you're going to cook this for at least 10 minutes or so, like on a simmer, you know, lower the heat down below medium and let it do some more cooking, so that way it's going to infuse all these flavors together. Now, you have an option of putting some seasoning on it at this point because you want your gravy to have a little bit more flavor to it. And you can add salt and pepper. I'd say probably just shake on like 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt and 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper to it. That way you're just going to give it a little bit of added something there to give it more of a flavor, because nobody likes bland gravy. I mean, because if you don't add the salt and pepper to it, you're not going to have much of a taste that way, except for what you got from your drippings. So go ahead and stir that up a little bit, mix those seasonings in, make sure that the pork chops are totally coated over top, and make sure that there is a lot of the gravy on top of them. And we're going to let this cook, like I said, for at least about 10 minutes until they are completely done. And the best thing about this, when it's done, it looks something like this. And this was mine when it came off of the stove. It's still steaming hot. And it had the best taste, the best flavor from the pork and the gravy. And it was a pleasure to eat. I hope you liked this video. And if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe. Check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen. And if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.